My name is Brian Palmucci. I'm the Ward 4 City Councilor, and I am doing double duty on behalf of Councilor Hughes, who's the Ward 5 City Councilor. Tonight we're co-hosting this meeting, and she got hung up with some childcare issues, so I told her to not stress out about it. I can handle it. Not my first rodeo. If anyone has any follow-up questions for myself or for Kirsten, you can contact me or her offline. I have some cards, and I think folks know how to get in touch with us. We're here to discuss a development proposal on two separate sites on Garfield Street, what was the name of the?
West Quincy.
West Quincy Motors, right. So I think folks in the neighborhood are familiar with that particular parcel. So just real quick, couple of ground rules. What I'd like to do is give the developer an opportunity to make a presentation, 10 minutes or so, without interruption, and then I'll moderate a question and answer period, and we'll make sure that everybody's questions get answered or their concerns get addressed, or if they just want to talk, that they have an opportunity to be heard. So, but like I said, we just try and give them that 10 minutes to go through it first, and then be respectful during that time, and then we'll make sure we answer all the questions. They answer all the questions. If anybody has questions for me, I'm happy to answer.
Come on up to the front.
Yeah, come on in. I have.
You won't ask any questions, I promise.
I have to run out to my car and get my pad of paper, but I'll send around a sign-in sheet. If you want, folks who are here, just sign in. That way, if there's something that comes up that we don't have an answer for tonight, that I don't have an answer for tonight, or they don't have an answer for tonight, it's a good way to know who is here, so you can follow up by letter or email or something to get you the information. Also, our good friend John here videotapes community meetings and public meetings. This isn't technically a public meeting, so we could kick him out, I think, if we wanted to, but he's harmless, so I always let him stay. But he puts the videos up on YouTube, so if you're not comfortable with that, I don't think he's, you don't pan to the people, right? You won't pan to the people if I ask you not to film people, right?
I will do whatever the counselor asks.
Thank you. So if you want to ask a question, you can ask a question. Your voice may be on there, but your face won't be, okay? John won't film you. So, and if you're not comfortable with John filming, you can hang around afterwards and ask the developers or their attorneys some questions one-on-one or follow up via email tomorrow, okay? So without further ado, I will introduce Ed Fleming Esquire, who is the attorney for the project. And it's been a while since we've done one, so
I know.
you're not like on my shit list anymore. So I won't introduce you as my least favorite person in Quincy.
I was going to introduce myself as your favorite lawyer in Quincy.
There you go, right. All right, so I like to give him a hard time, but that's okay. He gets paid by the hour. All right.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, Ed.
My name's Ed Fleming, as Brian said, and I'm an attorney in Quincy. I have a law office in Wallace, section of Quincy, and I do a lot of zoning and permitting work before the city, representing clients before the zoning board and the city council and the planning board. I'm representing a group tonight called the Marion Group. Derek Fitzgerald and Michael Sullivan are the principals seated in the back of the room. Derek and Mike have done another project in Quincy at 27 Mill Street recently, and I represented them in Ward 1, which is off Washington Street, and that project is underway. And it's very similar to the project that they're proposing here today, a townhouse-style development project. This particular proposal, and we're also joined, by the way, by Brian Donahue from Donahue Architects. Brian is the architect that designed the buildings, and Carlos Sculte is the civil engineer who's designed the civil plan. So he'll talk to you about any issue related to the land, issues like blasting and drainage and things of that nature. Carlos will deal with those issues in preparing his plans. This is a process. So the first thing that we do when we start any kind of permitting process, as I reach out to the city council, is because we want to share any information with the neighbors before we file any application with the boards. So no application has been filed with the planning board or the zoning board of appeals yet, because we wanted to come here and chat with you first, so that you understood exactly what was being proposed. As Brian said, this is a site that's best known as the West Quincy Motors site. And as you know, West Quincy Motors occupies two parcels on Garfield Street. They occupy 51 Garfield, where the actual, the building is in which they do the repairs, as well as a home that's located on that site. And they also own 64 Garfield across the street, which is basically a paved parking lot, which is it looks very consistent with this shape here. Even though the site also occupies a portion of the back that's not utilized for the parking. And both of those sites have been used by West Quincy Motors for years. I'm not sure how long they've owned this site, but I know that the West Quincy Motors operation has been in existence for over 50 years. I know Doug and Phil very well, who own the facility. They're very well respected as a high-class automotive repair business. And I know that you've seen cars come and go from the site on a regular basis to get repair work taken care of. And there's been quite a bit of storage of cars on the other side of the site during the course of those repairs and that work. The sites in total there's 2 separate parcels, and in the filing that will be made before the city will be 2 separate filings, because these sites aren't contiguous, meaning they're not connected to each other. Since they're across the street, there will be 2 separate filings made. The property at 51 Garfield Street is about a 17,000 square foot parcel. It's hard to see how big that site is because of the buildings that are on there, but the site actually goes back pretty far. The building is located kind of in the middle of the site, and as you know, there's a pretty decent parking lot or driveway, and then there's a home on the site right now. But that entire site's about 17,000 square feet. The parcel on the other side of the street is about 14,000 square feet. And as I said, you only really see this portion, which is a paved parking lot. But the site actually goes back out here with the blue line, and this portion of the site's really not utilized. And as you know, there's a retaining wall kind of in the back of the parking lot that prevents kind of use of this portion of the site. The buildings are located in a Residence B zoning district. So even though this has been a commercial use for over 50 years, the area in which you live is zoned Residence B. And Residence B is really a multi-family type of zoning district. It allows for 1, 2, 3 family houses as well as multi-family buildings. And it's all dictated by the zoning ordinance as to the size of those particular buildings that can be utilized for that site. What's being proposed in this particular proposal is to essentially to eliminate the commercial use of this site forever. The West Quincy Motors facility will be removed, the house will be removed, and in its place, there will be 2 separate proposals. As I said, there will be 8 residential townhouses built on this site, with a driveway that will access the site and provide parking under each building. So each property, each independent townhouse, which will be sold, it's not going to be rentals, they'll be sold as townhouses. Each of those units will have 2 parking spaces for each unit. And there will be additional parking spaces for 3 additional guest visitor spaces in the back. On the other side of the property, there'll be 6 townhouses proposed, as you can see, 3 on this side, 3 on the opposite. And again, a similar style with a driveway that will come up in between the units, and that will access garages under each unit, again, for 2 parking spaces per unit. And right now, there's an additional parking space being provided in the back of the site. As we talked about, this area of the site that's not utilized, but for the parking lot, will not be utilized for this development either. The goal is essentially to develop the area that's already developed and not intrude or need to blast out any materials out of this area as of right now. There may be a little bit of removal of the wall, and it may be expanded just a little bit for foundations and other needs for this parking space, but essentially the remaining portion of the site will not be utilized. The townhouses, these visuals are fantastic because they give you a really good feel of what the property will look like when developed. But this is the West Quincy Motors side. This is the side on which the existing business is operating. And as we said, as you can see, the townhouses will be built in this fashion, and it will have a driveway access to the site with parking under. There'll be 3 stories in total height, which you can see really well here, with the garage, and then 2 levels of living above. But I'll let Brian talk in more detail about the buildings. Maybe you can just take a minute just to walk through the buildings, Brian, and then we can come back and discuss some other matters as well.
Sure, thanks, Ed. My name is Brian Donahue. I'm the principal of Donahue Architects in Quincy. We've been in Quincy for about 60 years, second generation outfit. So I grew up in Quincy. I'm a Squantum guy. So
We won't hold that against you.
okay, all right, good. So I'll keep it short and sweet. Hopefully, pictures worth 1,000 words. So the graphics here depict aerial views of the development. So we've got our 8-unit parcel and the 6-unit parcel across the street. The main theme is 2 bedrooms, 2.5 baths, 2-car parking underneath. So when Ed mentioned 3 stories, legitimately it is 3 stories, but what we try and do and what we did on the other project was build that 3rd level into the roof. So it doesn't feel like you've got a 3-story building with a roof on top. It's built to scale the building down. So these buildings actually, as you can see by the graphics, these are actual Google map representations of the existing buildings. It doesn't overwhelm them in height and in size. So the main thing about these is that we're trying to make it sort of fit into the residential character of the neighborhood. So in very simple terms, we've got groups of 2 and 3 on each parcel. They're about 1,500 square feet, plus or minus maybe 16 or 17, and with 2 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. The local material, just typical, local vernacular shingles and double hung windows and architectural roof shingles and so forth. So it's a very simple design, but we think it fits in pretty nicely with the neighborhood. So anybody has any questions afterwards about the buildings themselves, I'd be glad to answer them.
Thanks, Brian. So the permitting and the approvals that are required on this proposal are both the Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals. The Planning Board has put in an ordinance change a number of years ago that requires site plan review for all developments over 3 units or more. And that's a very detailed process. And what the Planning Board does is that they require upon the filing that there be included in their architectural plans, detailed engineering plans, sometimes analysis of traffic, a close analysis of parking, landscaping plans, and things of that nature. And the Planning Board requires that the applicant pay for an independent engineer to review our engineer's work, to make sure that everything that we said is in fact true and accurate. During that, so that's a process that takes a couple of months, and we go through a detailed conversation and discussion with that engineer. We go back and forth on comments and concerns that they may raise, and we revise the plan to answer and respond to all of those before the Planning Board even hears this matter. Then we make a presentation to the Planning Board, at which time you'll get notice, and you'll have an opportunity to speak either in favor or against, or raise questions about the proposal even at the Planning Board stage. And after the Planning Board is satisfied and that their engineer is satisfied, they'll then vote on it and move it forward, either deny it or approve it. And if they approve it, then there's a second process that we need to go through at the Zoning Board of Appeals. And the Zoning Board essentially does the same thing the Planning Board did, but they look at it for zoning-related reasons. Does it fit on the site in accordance with the zoning ordinance? And they'll review that proposal as well. So there'll be 2 opportunities for the city's departments to review this plan and the city's boards to review the plan. And in the end of the day, that's a real protection for the neighbors, because we're not telling you this without any review. The city is reviewing this to make sure that what we're telling you is in fact accurate. So there'll be 2 separate filings made on this proposal and those 2 boards, and we'll have those hearings, and you'll get notice not only from your counselor, but you'll also get notice there'll be a notice in the paper, and if you're in a butter, which means if you're located within 300 feet of this development, you'll get an actual letter or notice of the meeting yourself. But it will be noticed in the Quincy Sun, and it will be filed there. So that's the presentation for tonight. We're really here to answer or respond to any questions that you may have. So
Can I get us started on that? In terms of the notification, if you got a letter about the meeting tonight, you got a letter about the meetings that'll occur. Can I just, by show of hands, how many folks live in Ward 5? If you know. Ward 5, okay. And the rest of Ward 4? Or don't know? Yeah, okay. All right, so if you got a letter from me, or you got it in Ward 4, or you got a letter, because one side of the street is Ward 4, the other side of the street is Ward 5, so Kirsten Hughes and I are kind of tag teaming this development, and so you'll either hear from her or from me, depending on where you live, about when those meetings are. So if you got a letter for this, you'll get a letter for that. Those will be 2 meetings, public hearings that you can weigh in on, same as you, almost more formal than you can here, but you can say everything there that you can say here. It's just a little more formal.
No, I didn't get a letter for this meeting.
Okay,
Were they sent just regular mail or certified or?
regular mail, yeah. We can't,
Yeah. I didn't
we'd
get-
go bankrupt doing certified mail. But so, just want to add to one thing that Ed has said.
Where you live?
I'm just like, right, 54 Garfield.
54 Garfield?
Yeah.
So one of the things that Ed had mentioned
Oh,
was.
you're right here.
the-
You're right
Yeah,
next door.
I'd like to know why I didn't get notified.
Yeah, that, I said, I don't know, we'll have to check the list. I didn't
Yeah, I
handle
don't
the
know,
mailing, the city councilor did, he probably did it through the city council office, so.
We mail the entire neighborhood. Sometimes things get lost in the mail or people throw it away. They think it's something that doesn't matter. So, both Councilor Hughes and I also, it's up on the city council webpage that we're having the meeting. I think it was in the newspaper. We both posted on Facebook and Twitter. So there's multiple ways that folks can find out about what's going on. Now, just to add on something that Ed had said about the planning board and the zoning board, because I know that can be a little bit confusing. The planning board, essentially, the site plan review and what the planning board's role is they can say how something will look, how something can be developed. They don't really get a yes or no, right? It's not, they can't say no to a project, they can't say yes to a project, they can just shape how the project looks. But the zoning board, on the other hand, the zoning board of appeals, they can say yes or no. Because if a project has to go before the zoning board of appeals, it means it doesn't meet our regulations in our zoning ordinances in the city. And if it doesn't meet that, they're looking for a variance, which means permission to do something that we don't allow as a matter of law. It happens all the time. People do it if they're trying to do a shed or a fence, or it happens. It also happens with development. So that's kind of the difference between the planning board and the zoning board, is the planning board says how, the zoning board says yes or no, okay? Ed, what is the relief you're seeking from the zoning board? You already knew where I was going with that, right?
I did, that's
Yeah.
why I'm pulling out my notes.
And I always like to ask that as the first question to kind of get things started, because that tells you a little bit about, in comparison to what we allow in the city of Quincy by our zoning ordinance, it tells you what they're looking to do that maybe exceeds the bounds a little bit. Sometimes it's very reasonable what they're looking to exceed, sometimes it's not. But to know what they're seeking and what to compare it to, I think is helpful for you guys in determining whether or not it makes sense for your neighborhood.
So primarily, there's a few things that we're seeking. We're seeking a density relief, meaning we're asking for more units than the zoning would allow. And we're asking for setback relief because of the unusual shape of the lot, because the lots are shaped in that kind of strange form. So we're asking, those are essentially the primary relief that we're asking
Okay,
for.
and not to jam you
What
up.
we're not asking for, and I think that's what's important in this neighborhood is parking. We're not asking for parking relief, we're not asking for use relief, meaning what the use, the residential use is allowed in the district, and the parking that we're providing is actually more than is required in the ordinance.
Under the ordinance, you need 1.5 spaces per unit. They're providing 2 and an additional 3 guest spaces, so they exceed that. Setbacks, what that means is the distance from another property line or from the street. So
So what's the requirement?
the setbacks, what, 25?
Yes.
25 feet?
Yeah.
And do you know roughly what you guys have here? We 10, 15?
We have a 10-foot setback on this side, we have a 15-foot setback on this side, we have 10-foot side setbacks on each side of the building. So there's a 20-foot setback requirement in that zoning district, and there's a 25-foot, 27-foot setback in the rear, and And we're asking for relief on that side, but not this side, because it's actually right here on this side as well.
Okay, so that's a setback from the
So
other
it's essentially
property.
pretty much all the setbacks we're asking for relief from.
And the density, in a residential B, they're good on height, you can go 3 stories. I actually think Brian did a good job kind of hiding that 3rd story as best you can, but so as a matter of right, they can do 3 stories. And then in terms of density, it's what, 3,000 square feet per unit?
The more units you do, the greater number of square feet you need to
So
provide.
it goes up to
per
4,000
unit.
on
So it
one
goes-
lot and 3,000 on the other lot?
Right, right.
Okay, and so that would be, these are what? What'd you say, this is 17 and that's 16?
With square feet, in size.
Yeah,
In size. That's not really the density. It's about a 1,700 square foot density. I can't remember the density off the top of my head, I don't have that number, but it's, yeah, the density goes up to about 4,500 square feet per unit, the more units you do. And we're providing about 1,700 to 1,800 square feet per unit.
okay, so, and again, I don't want to jam you up, but so you're looking at roughly double the number of units that would be permissible under the zoning, right? Some neighborhoods that works, some neighborhoods it doesn't, some folks are okay with that, some folks aren't. But I think it's helpful for you guys to know what the standard is that we have and what they're seeking to help better inform your thoughts and whether or not you want to support it, oppose it, or you're indifferent. So, that being said, does anybody have any questions, thoughts, concerns? Anything they want to say? You guys want to hear from more of their folks? I find, I've been to like 1,000 of these meetings, so I find it very boring, but you probably haven't, so you might find it more interesting. Go ahead, sir.
I have a question. When you build so close to the edge of your property, what does that mean for the abutter? Like, if they're gonna develop their property?
It won't impact the ability of the abutter to develop their property. It won't have any impact on that. And what we've tried to do, as you can see visually, there's going to be quite a bit of attention paid towards landscaping along the side property lines. One of the things that the zoning board, the planning board specifically, will require is a landscaping plan, a professional landscaping plan. It will have a lot of the details on the professional landscaping. But it won't impact your ability, if you're next door on either side, to do what you wish to do with your property. It won't have any impact on that.
I own a good piece of property around that. I own over a half an acre of land surrounding that.
Yeah.
So it actually, that's why I'm concerned about it.
And one of the things I think what's gonna come into play when it comes to the neighborhood is making sure that there's adequate parking. We know that Garfield Street's a pretty tight street. I've driven down it a number of times going to West Quincy Motors myself. So we knew that this had to be designed with at least 2 spaces per unit. And I know that Derek and Michael wanted to have that because they want to provide the people that are buying these units with at least that amount of parking. So we feel like it has a really, not only an adequate amount of parking, but even more parking than is required. And I think that that's going to be one of the more concerning issues in Garfield Street and some of these surrounding neighborhoods, is that there is enough parking.
The reason why Ed keeps harping on that there's enough parking is because usually at a community meeting, he doesn't get to say that they're doing enough parking, because usually that's one of the things they're seeking relief on.
Well, there's a lot of pushback, and there's a lot of changes in the city and in the ordinance, with the downtown developments and other things, where they've actually changed the numbers from 2 spaces per unit to even 1 space per unit in some developments. These townhouse-style developments haven't really come into that discussion, and the 2 spaces per unit really makes sense. But it really makes sense here in a neighborhood.
But I say that because he's highlighting it because it usually doesn't happen, that
Right.
that they can self-park. So it is kind of unusual, again, just from the kind of developer standpoint, and I'm not speaking for these guys, but just in general, my experience as counselor, they say, well, if we already have to go to the zoning board to ask for relief on the setback and relief on the density, we might as well try and do an extra unit and not have to do as much parking. So there's something to be said for a project that can park itself, which is, like I said, it's not always the case with some of these projects.
And I know that when Derek and Michael also thought about a design for this, I mean, just so you understand that the site's going to be sold, that's the goal. I mean, Doug and Phil have decided that they want to move on from their practice that they worked hard in for years. So the site's going to be sold, and in looking at this site for a development site for residential, there's a whole different type of style that you can do. You can do townhouses, or you can do apartment building style, where you do a 3-story apartment building and you do a square, box on the building and you park it under and you jam it in with the units. That didn't really seem to work here in Garfield Street. I think that Derek and Mike thought that with the houses, the style of the houses around it, it probably fit, the townhouses fit best in this neighborhood. So that's the reason why they did this development. The problem with townhouses is that they tend to be a little bigger because one, they're for sale and they attract a different type of person. They don't attract an apartment owner or apartment dweller. They attract a person that wants a house. But they don't want to necessarily take care of everything around the house, have a big yard. And so, but they want a garage parking underneath, and they want 2 levels of living. That's what the townhouses provide them, that an apartment wouldn't. And the townhouses seem to fit better here.
You guys, so the separate condo associations are the same? Do you know?
I think they'll probably be separate because they've got their own issues on each side of the road.
Okay. And just for your guys' clarification too, if this is something that moves forward, I forgot to say at the opening when I introduced this, is that oftentimes we have these meetings so that the developers and their team can take the temperature of the neighborhood. Showed up at meetings where everyone's like, oh, this is the worst project ever, or showed up at meetings where people are like, yeah, this is pretty good, looks all right, and then somewhere in the middle we're like, well, if you change this or that, or you make, and the developers will go back the next day, they'll probably have a meeting sometime in the next couple of days, they'll go over the feedback that they got, the input, determine whether or not they want to make any changes, and determine whether or not they want to move forward in the process. Because as Ed said, they haven't filed anything, so there really is no process. This is just a conversation. They're trying to take the temperature of the neighborhood to see if this is something people are okay with, if it's something that people are going to put up a big fight about, and whether or not they want to move forward. I've had it work all 3 ways, where a developer goes to a communal meeting, and then they say, forget it, I'm out, I'm not going to do it, neighbors don't like it, with some strong opinions that they don't like it, I'm not going to do it, and they walk away. Other developers will make some tweaks, and then other developers will say, we'll go forward regardless of what the neighborhood thinks, and then it becomes a situation where you're at the zoning board and folks are speaking. And through that process with the planning board and the zoning board, you can get some concessions from developers, especially with a condo association, because it's kind of a not these guys' problem, right? Because they'll build it, they'll sell it, and then a condo association will take over and the new owners will come in and they'll manage the association. But little things like landscaping or requiring them to keep up with certain aspects of the property through the association is something that the city through that zoning process can do through those boards. So when they, I've been at, like I said, hundreds of these meetings, they show trees and then the project gets done, and then, a year later, you guys call me or you call Kirsten, you say, I remember there were a lot of trees in those designs at that meeting, and I don't see a single tree when I drive by there anymore. And that's learning from experience. That's something now that we can ask the planning board or the zoning board, the planning board, to require them to maintain the number of trees to a certain diameter, and that's things that you can put in place if it's things you care about. I'm using the tree as an example. Any other thoughts, questions? Go ahead, man.
So in the scenario that everything's approved, zones, all that kind of stuff, how long does it take?
How long does the construction take?
You're probably looking at 12 months, start to finish.
And that includes like digging up that parking lot, knocking down the building, like everything?
Yeah,
from-
yeah.
The demo's pretty quick, right? And then you got maybe a month or so for site work, 2 months for site work,
I'd say 2-3 months for site work.
which is
I'm
them
asking
leveling
because
it.
it is
Yep.
a narrow, difficult to maneuver street that's never been paved in 25 years. So I am thinking about, big trucks and lots of noise and that kind of, and all the parking for the people that have to do that sort of thing.
Mhm.
I think the
5
great-
days a week.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and one of the things that the city requires what they call a construction management plan, and that deals with when trucks come and leave the site, what you're gonna do with the trucks when they're there. I think Derek's got and Michael have a great advantage here. They could work on one site and have this entire site available to them for parking their vehicles and materials, so that they can avoid any kind of interruption with the street. But the construction management plan deals with those very issues. And there is an ordinance also that deals with construction times, when they can work, when they can't work. There won't be any night-long
6 days a
nights.
week, just so you know.
6 days a
With the
week,
exception of Sundays.
but not until very late at night. So it will
Until
end.
6:30 in the evening.
Yeah.
So if you're working overnight, good luck.
Yeah, if you work overnights and sleep during the day, construction's not a great thing for the year. But really though, I mean, I just said, because I get the calls from folks, there's only probably a couple of months that it's gonna bother you, because once they get the frame up, and they get the, I don't know what you call it, the siding on, whatever, then they're inside, so you're not really hearing much. And you guys aren't doing blasting? I think, I heard you answer someone before. So the site's pretty clean in terms of getting in there?
Absolutely, yeah.
And if I can ask, why are you not using this back part? Is that
Well,
inaccessible or wetlands?
Yeah, well, we decided to go, not to go that route. We didn't want to cause any issues with blasting. We could have probably looked into that, but we decided not to go that route.
Got it. Okay.
And
Any
the
other?
rest, and this site on the other hand is pretty much cleared up.
Right.
So it's all on grade, but this one is much more difficult.
They also, in terms of the construction management plan, sometimes work like this will make the critters who live in the area go bananas, and so they're required by ordinance to bait. If people have issues, they contact the city, and these guys are responsible for some of that stuff to make sure that they don't, make rats or mice any worse in the neighborhood than they perhaps already are. Any other thoughts, questions? Well, you guys are a quiet group.
Are there going to be like decks out the back of these buildings between the perimeter and the building itself? or-
No, the plan is not for that. There may be a stair out, an egress stair out, but
So just be-
not a entertaining type.
So just landscaped all around the perimeter?
So what do you guys think in general? I mean, you like them, you don't like them, too much, too little? An improvement? What do you think?
10 feet is too close. What is it, 20 feet is the
25.
25?
20 feet, I think, on the sides.
It's not 10 everywhere.
It's 25 in the front. It's 25 in the front, but it's on the sides. You're right here, so you're talking about this setback here primarily, right?
Right.
That's what I expect.
And as far as the setbacks go, I think it's important to note that the existing building that's here is only 3 feet off the property line. So the proposed buildings are actually going to be pushed back a little further from where the existing one is. And the proposed building is, as indicated here, going to be about the same distance where that residential building is right now. So in terms of what you're going to be, feeling from your property should be more or less the same if you're directly abutting. And it'll be better along this side.
John,
But worse on the other side of the street.
The other side of the street, there's no buildings right now, so there's no existing
No, I mean
building.
for where the property is, just because, like, we're at 70. And so what I envision when I look at
Where
those
is that?
pictures, and they look super nice,
right here?
exactly.
You're right here, okay.
Is that now I can see into somebody's bedroom window who can see into mine. Like, that's what I see when I look at that.
It's called a privacy thing that,
So one of the things you might want to consider is talking to these guys about adding some very mature trees between that property line. And say, I mean, I don't know where I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing here, but say,
Right.
listen, I think it's okay, but this is my concern.
Yeah.
And you have them create a natural barrier so that you won't look it. So when you look out your window, you'll get a tree. Because to be honest with you, when they're selling it, and they're showing this unit, and you're in there brushing your teeth in the bathroom, it's not helping their sales for the person who's thinking about buying it to see you as much as you don't want to see them. So there's some benefit to that. And anyone who's in a butter, those are things, if I live next door to a project, any project being built, those are the things that I would think about. What's my view going to be like? How's it going to impact me? It looks like, the parking they have, I think probably the traffic impact would be negligible on this. But the privacy stuff, I think you're right, it's a concern, and certainly something I think you can ask these guys to take a look at before they submit a plan.
And we're happy to share the landscaping plan with you, and we'll definitely take that into consideration, both on your side, sir, and on your side, to create some nice dense landscaping along.
Yeah, I think just.
I know that we did that on Mill Street. We had the same kind of questions and concerns raised on Mill Street, which is over off Washington Street. There was an abutting neighbor, just much like you, and there was, I know Derek and Michael agreed to install some nice dense landscaping in that area.
Yeah, I just, for us, like, it's a huge change after more than 25 years where it was just a parking lot.
Parking lot, right?
Mhm. So you guys aren't taking down any trees, mostly, right? So there's
There's no trees on this side, I don't know about the other side, right? Is there, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and the rear of the property, everybody said it slopes up, so the big hill that you see back here and all the trees that are gonna be back there, that's not gonna be touched at all. So that's all gonna be left as is, and I don't think there would ever be anything proposed back there, just because, there's ledge and rock out there, so it's not really conducive to building back there regardless.
In terms of flooding and runoff, there's an ordinance in the city that requires them to not, just to boil it down, to not make things any worse. So they have to take the condition that it is, and they either have to improve it or not make it any worse. I'm gonna guess that they're gonna improve any runoff significantly for water from the site, because it's all paved now. So you're gonna have more grassy area than you would the way it exists now.
And that's analyzed and reanalyzed and analyzed again to make sure that that's.
Now, what about dumpsters?
I think that the plan right now is probably to provide for city pickup, like it's done with the other residential homes. And so to avoid a dumpster on the site at all. So the folks will have dumpsters or trash cans within their garages, and they'll bring them out to the street just like everyone else will have to.
Hold on, somebody's gonna hold on to like garbage inside their house,
No, they're gonna, in the garage.
The garage.
In the garage, just like everybody does.
inside their house.
I have it in my garage.
Sure. Where do you keep your trash?
Outside.
Oh, really?
I keep it in, keep it inside with the sealed container. Those will be provided probably as part of the development, part of the sale. The units will be sold and they'll have those containers, so they'll all have the same nice containers, and they can utilize those for both recycling and for trash disposal. And I know that on the 27 Mill Street site, which we did, the city actually, that site had an opportunity where the trucks could actually enter the site and then leave the site, and the trash trucks were gonna kind of drive through the site. We don't have that available here, but there's less units, and so they'll be able to utilize the street to put it out like everyone else does and pick it up.
Now, in Quincy, they have, if you have 8 units or more, you're required to have a dumpster. Does that, do condos or townhouses?
That's something that we'll discuss with the city, if they feel as though a dumpster, a lot of times a dumpster is not something that they want because of rodent control and
Dumpsters
other
are terrible.
things.
They're terrible.
But if the city prefers that Derek and Michael do that, there is space for a dumpster in the rear of the site. But the goal would be to do it the way everyone else does, because it really, in a nice sealed container is the best way to go to avoid rodent problems.
And so, just to touch upon what Ed said, that they were, gee, I almost feel like I'm doing your job here.
Okay.
So these are condos, not apartments. I will tell you that I was at a community meeting. I don't think Ed had anything to do with that project. The developers, this is on West Street, developer says, oh, they're all townhouses, you don't have to worry, there won't be apartments. And then the day they went on the market, there were like 8 of them or 9 of them. One guy bought all 9 and rented them all out. So the neighbors were like, oh, but they're rentals now. So you never know what someone's gonna do with a condo, but likely these are probably gonna be $375-ish thousand, right? I would imagine. In that range, hopefully, right?
Oh,
350 to 400?
More.
More, yeah, because of the 2 parking.
And there will be, in the condo association bylaws, there's gonna be a restriction on re-renting these. So not only, people might have the ability to do so, but there's gonna be a requirement that it be a 1-year lease minimum, so that it's not a transient type of place where people are coming and going. You'll know the people that are living there, because they'll be required to live there at least a year if people choose to do that. But I think the price point, and I think they're gonna be beautifully done. Brian designed beautiful buildings over on Mill Street. They're very attractive there, and there's a lot of interest in those. I think there's gonna be a lot of interest in these as well. People may very well choose to buy these for their own home. And hopefully you'll have some new neighbors that care about your neighborhood just as much as you do.
Then a 3-bedroom or
2
2 bedrooms?
Any other thoughts, questions, folks want to weigh in?
When do you plan on going to zoning or planning?
They'll make that decision, I suggested, I would expect after they regroup, see what the neighbors think. You probably can't get a date for at least a couple of months, right? So
Right, as you know, it's from the date of filing, it's about a month before we have a hearing. Our hope would be that we finalize the plans after this meeting with the input from the neighbors, and we get this filed probably within the next few weeks. if
Will they
possible.
both go at the same time?
They'll both go at the same time, so we'll run them simultaneously. So yeah, they'll both be heard, so issues that come up on either side of the road can be dealt with.
Okay.
And because you're doing 2 separate projects, you don't hit the 10 units for affordable housing
Right.
compliance, right?
That's right, that's right. And that's not an intentional thing, that's because they're on separate sides of the road.
Just a lucky happenstance.
Yeah.
So if we don't have any other thoughts, questions, go ahead. You have one question?
I think you said earlier, there's been a garage there for like, what, 50 years or something? Is there any issue with ground contamination?
Nope, there's a clean 21E.
21E is an environmental study.
It's the environmental study that was done by Doug and Phil, and it's a clean 21E. Those issues and any other issues that come up during construction will have to be addressed by an environmental site professional. Carlos's folks are environmental people as well, and they can address issues.
And what I'll add to that too is that all the work that we're doing here, all the existing infrastructure as it relates to oil, water separators, and whatever's there right now, that's all gonna get removed. And all new infrastructure as it relates to sewer, water, storm drainage, it's all gonna be improved, it's all gonna be new. There's all infrastructure in the street, so from a civil engineering standpoint, it should be fairly straightforward. All the hookups are right there, it's gonna be cleaned, all the old infrastructure is gonna be removed, so it's gonna be improved from all aspects, from environmental, from a stormwater standpoint.
So what we can do is we can kind of break up the formal meeting, and if folks want to come up and look at the pictures or ask questions to me about anything, this project or anything else.
Well, the question about the utility lines, is that, could be cause disruption riding through there, but utility lines and
Will electricity have to be shut off or gas or
the
anything?
streets up?
No, typically you can do the hookups, if there is any disruption, it's an hour or so maybe, but it won't impact any of your services that go to the main lines. Typically they can make live connections to the water, to the sewer, to the drain, so.
See, that really get one on Kent Street, they block the whole street line and get by.
Oh, you mean in terms of vehicles out there doing the work? So when they are doing it, there'll be police detail, there'll be construction crews out there, and they'll make sure that if there is any traffic impacts, there'll be somebody directing and make sure that you can get through.
So what I'd suggest is we'll break up the kind of formal meeting. You can come up, look at the photos, they're not photos, whatever they are, the designs, ask any questions to me or these guys that you want on a one-on-one basis. And if anybody has any questions or follow-up, you can email me, call me, or Kirsten. I'll leave some cards up here again. And I want to make sure someone doesn't steal my pen. All right, well, thank you all for coming out. Like I said, you get notice of when these other hearings are if they decide to proceed. Oh, okay.